today, boss, and
Hello?
So here.
I'm listening.
awesome. So we'll have some for the next one. Some new information.
Okay, that's great.
Thanks a lot for stopping to help me fix my plow yesterday.
Oh, is that what you guys are taking around with?
Oh, it's been so long, I was like.
Just get driving, good for you.
Hey, look, Dan, Mason, you can't talk to me.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, good.
All I had on was a bungee cord. I don't know if I could have done it.
Yeah.
5 years ago, we had talked about.
Okay, we can start.
Yes, we
If
did.
everybody's ready.
Very.
Man,
Really, all right if we start with you?
Oh, sorry, yes, sir.
This Tyler. Good evening, Peterborough. This is the joint select board budget committee meeting, Tuesday, January 24th. It is 5:30 still for a few more seconds. We have a quick bit of business to handle before we start the budget committee meeting. With us live via satellite is Tyler Ward over here.
Hi.
This is Bill Kennedy to my right. I'm Bill Taylor. This is Nicole McStay, our town administrator. And just to her left is the famous Ellie Prince, who is the assistant to the town administrator. Tyler always mentions that we're on Comcast Channel 22 and YouTube and Ustream, but anybody that would watch that already knows that. Because they're watching.
fair enough.
Anyways, you want to tell us what's going on with the well
Happy to,
thing?
yes. So Coldstone Springs, we are finally at the point where we have an award recommendation to get this project underway. As you know, we've engaged Underwood Engineers. They are acting, they are not only our engineers on this project, they're acting as our owner's rep. What we are looking for is to accept their recommendation to award the Coldstone Springs project to DeFelice Corporation. They are the company that came in on budget. So we'll be looking forward to go forward with them. And also looking for you to authorize me to execute all contracts and other documentation necessary to get the project moving forward.
So we put this out to bid, these guys came in with a bid that was on target.
Yep. We had 3 respondents.
Have we had experience with them in the past?
We have not, but Underwood has.
Okay.
Yes, some of those other bids on some of the line items were way out. They were completely on opposite sides of the spectrum.
Absolutely, yeah. They were all over the place.
Well, you can't blame them for trying, I guess. But it was a whole lot of work went into those bids
Yes.
to not be competitive.
Leslie has a question.
I'm just curious about recommendations, like whether you take them from other municipalities that have worked with them and.
Yep. Seth has reached out to a couple of the other municipalities that have worked with them. Of course, Underwood's going to be the one working with them on a day-to-day basis, and they have prior experience as well. So Lily's gone over the numbers, and we should be able to do this within budget with the grants that we have and the authorization that we've already received. So.
Quick question, is it the same company that Jaffrey's gonna use?
Yes, this is the same project. Peterborough and Jaffrey are doing this jointly. So if you look through the documentation, you saw the budget that broke it out, exactly, that had it broken out between the two towns and who's responsible for what.
I was just curious if they're gonna handle just the Peterborough side of getting the water main over to.
That is where the project will split. Once we've got the facility itself constructed, then the project really splits into 2 different sub-projects. You have the water main going to Jaffrey and tying in there, and then our water main, which will go over Hillendale before it finally finds its way to Route 202. And then ends up with our line.
You're next one.
You guys are a little late.
Sorry about you.
So, any other questions?
we accept the bid and authorize the board to negotiate contracts. Execute.
I'll second that. Any more discussion about that one? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
That's everybody.
I think that's all we have for select board business.
All right. With that, we will turn it over to Carl Mavzino, Chair of the Budget.
Thank you, Bill. Let me introduce the members of the Budget Committee. Sitting in the back, we have Mandy Sliver. A couple chairs over, we have Dustin Lewis. And in front of the group, we have Bonnie McIntyre. On my far right, we have Mary Clark. We have Al Lemos, Rick Lesser, and Andrew Usselman. So we're missing only one member tonight, and so we have quorum. Now, I think our agenda is going to fit into the time available for a change. We're going to begin with looking at IT, GIS, and PEG with Fash. Fash,
Thank you.
explain it all to us, please.
I just have a few slides, just go over a few items. Just gonna go over some numbers and then answer any questions. Thank you very much. Fash Farashahi, GIS IT Director of Town of Peterborough. Gonna go over some few basic slides on some training and then budget numbers we can discuss. Start with the easy one first. PEG TV, which stands for Public Education Government Television. This is wholly funded by the cable TV franchise fees that everybody sees on their bills. It is not tax supported, and we put the money that we get from the franchise fees back in the broadcast station. Most of the it's not broadcast. A lot of people watch the Ustream and the YouTube primarily. In this budget, really the only thing that's changed, we did add some, increase the equipment, furniture, tools, $10,000 to address some of the audio issues in this room. There's some things we can do. We can't go too over the top, but we're going to do our best. And I should say Tim Brezovic, who's broadcasting the meetings, can do his best. He's our television producer, station director who broadcasts these meetings. So we're going to try to improve the sound quality as best we can. We're kind of limited on certain things with our provider, but we'll see what we can do. So that's the PEG budget. Pretty much it. Bill?
Fosh, where's that $15,000 coming from?
Franchise fees. Right now,
Franchise fees? Okay.
yeah, we have this is a revolving fund.
Right.
There's a balance of over $68,000.
Oh,
Just to mention, we did an upgrade about 3.5 years ago at this point, in the middle of COVID. And we will be looking at doing another upgrade 2 or 3 years. We don't want to put off too much, but we start planning it sooner or later so we're not scrambling. But that's what the rest of the balance revolving fund will go to, is the big increase. The last upgrade we did here, it wasn't too dramatic. It was almost $60,000, I think.
right.
TV broadcast equipment is not cheap, but everybody does use it.
How much
so.
is it going to cost us to turn that on-air sign on?
I can disconnect it for free. This is not a whole high school.
The question is, where do we get this TV back up?
Oh, that's true.
Actually, TV is the cable in this building, which we've called several times about. Nicole can debrief you how many times I've called Comcast.
I
So.
can't even count.
Yeah, so. Sorry, I don't want to degrade, just don't judge this room based on everything else. That on-air light is actually a network device. We're probably going to cut that wire and just use a switch. Try to get fancy, I'm telling you, this is what happens. Tim's listening, he's like just rolling his eyes, but yeah. Anyway, any other questions on the PEG budget? Again, revolving fund, no tax money. It's all funded by cable TV franchises, not internet. Just want to make that clear. Because when you get a Comcast bill, you're not paying franchise fees unless you're using a cable TV. So. Question? Good? All right. We'll move on. Just a quick slide. I got asked this at the Capitol meeting. I was like, I should show my slide. Just a quick breakdown of what equipment and what services we keep on premise here and what we choose to put in the cloud. So on the left, on premises, are backup systems. We have 2 storage sites, we call them, where all of our data goes, which is here in the townhouse and one at the police station. The police station is kind of our backup site. It's the most secure building, of course, in the town. Just to mention, DR stands for disaster recovery. So the police stations are disaster recovery or vice versa. We are looking at a third disaster recovery. We wanted to use a different town location, but we're now looking at secured internet cloud. We're still investigating, but that's our next kind of move, is the third off-site disaster recovery. And this is like Thunder Mountain, where you're sending the data there, and when you want it back, they send you drives. You're not downloading it over the internet or anything. So just another way just to shore up the disaster. You never know what happens. As far as town documents and all that, that's stored here on premise. This is part of the backup system, archives, the GIS databases, the authoritative databases. The data we edit, modify, and maintain is here. Of course, the financial software and databases are all here, and the police database is all in town buildings. Cloud services, just a not exhaustive, but pretty basic. All of our business software for office products are in the cloud, including the email server. All the GIS mobile and internet apps are in the cloud. And then the fire rescue call data, and of course all of our websites are hosted in the cloud. And then our help desk system is also in the cloud. So just a quick breakdown. Any questions on this? Yes?
Bob Herring-Smith. I assume the backup system is designed so that a ransomware attack would not pollute all the backups?
You do your best you can. There's built-in securities. There is nothing that's bulletproof. But yes, these are newer, modern systems we just deployed. But you have to keep up with the other stuff. Endpoints, everything, check your backups. Yeah, so we have the most modern we get right now. Yes?
In view of a third system for backup, or third location.
Yes.
What do you define as a disaster? Let me put it that way. What is a disaster in your eyes? In your eyes.
Well, we've been through some disasters, but my thinking when I think of disasters now is...
One in particular.
Well, Nicole and I have been here a long time. We've been through about 3 or 4 that... a big disaster, the thing I used to think about, I used to tell the town administrator, I'm not going to tell you who's in that seat, but I'd say, if this building burns down, we're all done. Meaning, that's where I look at it, is building burned down, all my backups, all my computers, everything's destroyed. I need to go pull everything back in. So that's what I think of as disaster. Catastrophic failure, this building goes down, we go grab the data off the police station, start rebuilding the network from scratch.
Why would you need a third site then? When would that come into play?
Standards are you try to keep the 2 disaster sites in different towns, let alone the same streets. So, yeah. You never know what's going to happen, so yeah. Yes.
Your server costs are going from 10 grand last budget to 35,000 this year?
Yeah.
Why?
All costs are up, and the way we're doing all of our applications, everything, we need more resources. I just bought a brand new server. It was almost 30 grand this time just to replace our #1 host. So the costs have gone up exponential, and the town over the last, I've been here 21 years almost, we have exponentially expanded our network, I think tenfold since I started. So it's not a matter of just, we're using the same service and same applications all the time. We are always kind of enhancing, improving. We need certain specs to run certain applications, so the costs are going up.
In moving to a web-hosted or a cloud-hosted solution, you do away with the need to pay for backup systems. It's part and parcel of the service level agreements that are signed. Cloud hosting costs are going down after COVID. So if the cost of doing cloud hosting is dropping and the cost of doing servers is growing, why aren't we just migrating everything to the cloud so we don't have to pay for all this?
From past analysis, past experience, it's not always you save a bunch of money. Because I tried to move one of our archive servers in the cloud, and I still had to pay all the licensing, and I had to pay the cloud backup service cost, and then I had to pay an operational cost. When you talk about Amazon Web Services, it depends on which bucket you're in. But I can tell you another third kind of what we look at is we don't want all of our town data in the cloud. And that's kind of...
Why not?
For security and other personnel reasons, the town has chosen not to put certain things in the cloud.
Have you chosen that or have they?
We collectively have chosen that.
This has been since I've been here. We've talked about it a lot because cloud is, when it first came out, like, you're like, what's cloud? It's internet. But it's a matter of the town's made a choice, and I say town collectively, Board of Selectmen, town administration, town directors, that certain data we don't want in the cloud, we choose not to have in the cloud.
Why is that distinction made? Like, why is it okay to host people's medical records in the cloud, but not...
These aren't medical records. That's a call data. That's not medical records. That's just how many times Southwest Mutual Aid calls Chief Walker's group.
So that's not the Tempsys data.
That is not what I'm talking about. That's just call data out of Southwest. That's what I'm referring to. I'm not exactly all the systems Chief Walker uses. I guess part of this thinking, Andrew, is we are kind of holders of our own destiny.
Tempsys data, because I know you asked that specifically, Tempsys data is being controlled by the state on their own servers.
Yeah.
So it's not on a commercial cloud per se. It's on their own servers with their own protection that they have taken responsibility for. So there is differences. A lot of these data, for instance, let's take the GIS database. That is data that Fash himself and Julie are generating, creating themselves and managing themselves. So that is work that's being done in-house.
Can you talk a little bit about what exactly that data is?
Which data? This?
GIS?
Gosh, I have a whole presentation on this. GIS, as far as it stands for Geographic Information Systems. It is, of course, the way I define it simply is maps linked to databases for a specific location. In this case, it's Peterborough. The town of Peterborough has had a GIS since 1997 when we first built our digital land base, and ever since then we put the parcels on top of it, started creating the buildings, planimetrics, which is pavements, water. Everything you see in the tax maps is all generated from GIS, and all that data lives here. We maintain it, in the databases, and then we use that to push cloud applications out to the world, out to our public works guys, the public, and everybody else.
What do other towns in the Monadnock region spend on GIS services every year?
Other towns, and I'm not sure what other towns spend on. I know City Keene has a GIS system. I'm not sure how much they spend. I couldn't speak to that.
Okay.
Going back to Andrew's earlier question on the server systems increase, you mentioned that part of that rationale was the increase in price as well as the expansion of our system.
Yes.
What do you see happening in the next year or so regarding that 35,000?
In the next, we'll say, year to 18 months, let me give quick back history. We had 17 hardware servers a long time ago. We collapsed down to 3. We're trying to run minimal hardware. Over the last couple years, and actually more recently of this past year, going forward, I want to have 3 big servers that handle all 30 of our application servers. And I want to have a 4th just to handle what I call what's called our domain controllers, all the security and all the logins on a separate server. So I can see that, replacing the 2 big servers next year, and then coming up with a 4th small one just to handle logins and some other security things. So my plan is to have 4 big servers, moving forward, or 3 big ones and 1 smaller one just to handle certain things. So.
Can you talk a little bit about the capacity of these servers? Like, what are we looking at in terms of storage size, processors?
I would have to pull specs. I can tell you they're not the primary storage. The servers just the storage alone, we only put a couple terabytes, maybe 10 most. Those storage units, which are HP brand, sorry. Oops, right there.
Oh.
That was it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that was quick.
Ow. Did it go out of it?
Yeah, you closed it.
With 2 buttons? Okay.
Hang on.
Okay, sorry.
Call IT.
Got it.
Yeah, exactly. Well done.
Get the IT guy out.
Systems are fast.
What I was saying was the storage units actually hold all the data. The servers themselves run operating systems, and then they run the other server operating systems. But all the data and databases are stored in that storage room.
We have 10 terabytes of storage?
We have more than that.
Why?
We've had a network for 20 plus years. We have archives, we have databases.
We've made a point of getting rid of filing cabinets whenever possible, so we scan everything into storage. So we have documents that we are required to retain for 50 to 100 years. Many of those we don't have to retain in physical form anymore. We're able to scan those in, but that means that we need to have storage to handle all that.
10 terabytes is an exceptionally large.
Absolutely.
There's
And we have a
there is
ton of data
no
there.
way to get to 10 terabytes
We
with
have-
scanned documents.
It's not just scanned
It's not
documents.
just scanned documents.
So other than the scanned documents,
Databases, we have all the staff archives.
relational
Yep.
databases that equal 10 terabytes?
Some of them, yeah. But not the database themselves, no, but your cumulative storage.
Right, so we talked about documents, but that's not.
Document
that's not-
archives going back, and the archives, it should be clear, go back to 1800s, not just like last 20
Yeah, but
years.
they're just PDF image scenes, right?
Yeah, in a database,
So
and
there's not
then
video in this thing, right?
we have some videos on that. We try to not keep video
How
here.
many hours of video do you have?
I never tallied. We try not to keep video on the servers here. We try to keep those in the cloud services.
$35,000 is a lot of money, so maybe we can do an audit about what we are storing and make a determination whether or not we need to be. It's a lot of money.
Oh, trust me. I've been here 21 years, and I said to Nicole, I cannot believe I'm about to buy a $30,000 server. 5 years ago, I'd have choked on it. So
If it makes you feel better, I'm choking on it now.
yeah, and honestly, $30,000 for this type of operation. Again, we're not new. We're not fledging.
But that's what I'm trying to get to, is I'm not really clear what this operation is. Because this expense life doesn't exist in any other town in the Monadnock region. We are unique in that front.
We are unique.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
And this is a lot of money, $655,000? It's a lot of cash. And I'm trying to figure out what exactly the town is getting for this. I think the GIS system is really cool, don't get me wrong. I love pulling up. It's a little more clumsy to go to Bennington or Jeffries. But that's a ton of, that's $100 per resident that we're paying for a website with a map. And,
Oh, it's a lot more
Oh,
than that.
well, I understand it's a lot more than
Sure.
that, but what value are the citizens getting from it?
Well, what you see is a parcel app, right? They're showing the map. It's just a map.
But the question stands, what is the value the citizens are getting for $250,000?
Talking GIS, IT.
Your budget all in, this department
Yeah.
doesn't exist in other towns.
Correct. This town is unique in that regard.
We spend a collection of $120,000 in telephone services, which is under your purview, at least that's what I'm told by other department heads. Town of Jeffrey spends 10. So, like, our costs are literally 10 times higher at your department, and I'm trying to get my arms around why, especially when this department doesn't exist other places.
Keeping in mind that telephone line also includes our internet bill, so it's.
Do you know what we pay all in for telephone services in this town?
We pay all in on telecommunication services, what you see in that line. Yes.
And what does it sum to?
I'd have to go
Which
through
part?
all the budgets because we also have it in utilities and we also have it in ambulance.
And not all telco per se is in my budget. I do manage and
You
oversee.
manage the whole contract.
Manages the whole thing.
Well, it depends which one you're talking about, because we have Comcast, we have Verizon.
The line items in the budget for telephone.
Yeah, that's Verizon, and 8x8, we also have the VoIP.
So we're getting to $120,000 for a Verizon account in VoIP?
I'm not
I don't know
sure.
where you're getting
but-
your numbers.
Yeah, I'm not.
If you look at the telephone expenses in every department. and
I would
see-
have to run those numbers
Yeah,
myself. I'm
I
not
have
taking
to.
100 and,
Yeah.
I'm
I
not
have.
taking your number.
And so, well, you're welcome to disagree with me, but that's what I'm trying to get to, is like, who owns that number? Because when you talk to department heads, it's Fash, you talk to Fash, it's I don't know. So, is somebody looking at this? Doesn't sound like it, right?
Which part?
What we're spending collectively in telephone and internet services, and why it is order of magnitude higher than every other county.
I can speak to some parts I manage. The 8x8, I do code the bill, so I know how much that is. The Verizon, I manage the telephones. The billing is not me. So,
So you're not in charge of that spend? That's not a contract you manage?
He's in charge of some of it. He manages some of it. He does not manage all of it.
yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts in there because it's our internet, it's our telephones, it's our cell phones, it's our mobile data terminals. There's a whole host of things that are charged to that line. So if you'd like to break down all that, sure, we can do that for you.
The remote's not letting me move forward.
No,
Sorry.
sorry.
Oh, the battery died?
No, it's because he exited out of it. Go ahead now.
Okay.
There you go.
So Fash, let me ask you a real quick question. Last year, we made a fairly sizable investment into the IT department. Was that primarily for security software?
I'm going to talk about that as far as the upgrade to the Microsoft, which did push the software budget exponentially. So, and honestly, the only thing I can offer Andrew is to come visit me. I mean, I have a lot of stuff. This isn't like overnight, and it's not just maps. Those
I
are.
would love to see a breakdown of exactly what's getting hosted on these servers and why it's so much money.
Yeah, I can.
Can you pull that together?
I can show you, but I don't know if it makes sense without the context. Like we literally had an operations meeting today. I went through all the servers to figure out what's what and where we're moving. So it's not just matter. Oh, I got 28 servers. That's not going to tell you what they're doing and what they're...
No, I'm more interested in what exactly is living on these things and why we need 10 terabytes of storage.
Well, 10 terabytes isn't that much. I mean, but we can, yeah, I can help you with that. Because honestly, 10 terabytes, you also think about backups.
Well, you do. I think about moving things to the cloud so you don't have to pay for it, but I take your point.
That's the thing, I've done it. You don't save that much money moving. We've tried, trust me. I've tried to move certain things to the cloud and like, I still got to pay for that? So it's not always the same. So. Carol Nelson?
Carol Nelson, so you have 10 terabytes available. How many are being used?
We have about 10 terabytes of data and archives that we have to maintain and keep alive for the town.
So
And that was the last time we analyzed it a few months ago before we moved.
So you need all 10 terabytes?
Yeah, and when I said the 10 terabytes, some of it does include backup, and we try to cut down on, like, we had, at one time we were doing a lot more backups, so we had to kind of cut it down so we're not keeping archives more than we need to.
Right.
But 10 terabytes is the number we use. Like when we spec our storage devices, that's the number that we use with our consultants to make sure we have the right number. Not oversizing it, but definitely not undersizing it.
Okay, so at some point, because you're not keeping everything that you maybe want to keep or need to keep, everything you need to keep but want to keep, so do you eventually need more than 10 terabytes?
No, we, like I said, it was kind of over the top. Like we could recover a file in 10 seconds, so we went where we're not keeping like entire server archives for more than a year or two.
Yeah.
We don't need to keep a server around that's been deprecated. We keep it around as long as we can, but once we run out of space, we push that out. But any of the files, archives, folders, all those have to be kept and maintained.
So it's a need.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a need.
Yeah, not a want, it was a need.
No, it's not a want. I don't want to manage 10 terabytes of data, trust me. It's not the easiest thing and it's not most fun. Yes?
Can you talk to us about the current stat of security audits, SOC 3, high trust certification, or anything like that?
We haven't done those types of audits.
We haven't done any security audits?
Well, we've done security audits, but not in those. You're talking about pen testing?
Those are industry standards. So what security audits are you doing if you're not following industry standards?
What we're working with right now, this is actually our training of our staff. With the municipality, a town, it's very unique because you run police, fire, billing, everything. You're kind of a microcosm of the world. And one thing we learned the hard way, you have to train your staff and make them aware. And over the last few years, of course, with the ransomware and all the attacks has gone up exponential. Of course, the town did get it with the BEC, Business Email Compromise. Part of that was not the training, sufficient training to recognize phishing and the social engineering that happens. And it's been happening, it's not new. Some people were kind of clueless to it. It was a kind of wake-up call. Other people were well aware of it. But over the last year plus, we embarked on training for our staff that's required. Cyber awareness training specifically in verification. We do an annual assessment the first year, which was September 21. We shut down the town, did a 2-hour cyber training. Moving forward, we're now using the KnowBe4 training platform. We did an annual assessment in September again. And this was not necessarily to be punitive or to see how people are doing, but more for us to kind of gather like where our weak points are. And of course, the passwords authentication incident reporting. So we've been concentrating on those, password trainings more. And the incident reporting was interesting to me because we've always talked about reporting our phishing and all that. So it's just a matter of like, just educating people like, if you get a phishing email, don't forward it to IT. There's a little button there, report it. And this year, one thing that was different, we started getting, not started, but we got the phone calls coming in were kind of, if they were really targeted, it kind of sketched out some of our staff. They didn't know what to do. Chief Kennard told us that they should, whoever gets the call that's kind of suspicious, not just the, oh, you got your insurance, your warranty's running out, but very targeted, possible identity theft, they're not sure, but they're essentially, any employee that gets those calls should call the police dispatch, they'll record in a log, just to have it on the record. But otherwise, cyber training for all the staff, required, verified. This is continuous through the year. We do phish tests through the year, and of course the annual assessment to kind of see how we're doing.
Is everyone on two-factor authentication?
Yes.
Email?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is just org risk score. We started out higher, and the score will fluctuate depending on trainings and phishing activities, and other activities, we're trying to get down to a 20 by next year. And this is the budget item. What Bill were referencing last year, for the software, we were planning to upgrade our Microsoft licensing for Office 365. Now, Microsoft 365, we're going from E3 licensing to E5. We just implemented that starting about 3 weeks ago, which does put in, gives us access to a lot more anti-phishing, conditional use policies, and a whole lot more restrictions.
Sorry, that was me.
Okay, I was like,
I was trying to move Tyler out of the way so you could see the whole.
gotcha. So yeah, so that line item did go up because of the E5 Microsoft upgrade. But yeah.
But those expenditures were this year, but that's a yearly annual.
Yes, and we got notified this year when I pulled the trigger to upgrade, they went up 10%. So we increased the budget to reflect. Not all vendors went up. I noticed the larger vendors went up more than the smaller vendors. We have some software that's a few $100 a year. Those guys stayed the same. The big boys went up 10% plus. So that's what we're looking at. Staff development. I did increase this line item with everything getting back to normal. We have a lot more in-person trainings. I also want to send one of my staff to a GIS leadership conference. Mileage, of course, increased as well. And then telephone and the other items are roughly the same. Yeah, so.
How much staff is there?
With myself and 3 other people. I have Cole Roy as my network administrator, great at patching and updates. Tim Brezovic, who handles TV station, does some library tech, does some trainings over there. An all-around hardware guy. And then Julie Elwell is my GIS person. That's actually who I was referring as far as staff development, to get her a little more training in the GIS realm. So, yeah, 4 total.
Gosh, no one on staff is a cybersecurity specialist, right?
No, we have to be omni generalists. We do talk to numerous cyber forensic people. We actually do some trainings with Adam Group, who's a forensic specialist that works with Primex and other communities. That's actually what we concentrated on this year, was shoring up our cloud service, especially the Microsoft, especially since we're moving to the E5 that has a whole lot more management, but security policies, anti-phishing. That's what we've been concentrated on. Because we talked to Jason about doing pen testing and other things, but discussion with him, he felt the best use of our time was doing security training, learning, because we're not security experts. We have to handle from desktop computers, printers, to the police database, to everything. So that's where we rely on those kind of guys to kind of help us through, if we have little, gaps in our security. So.
Give your name, please.
Loretta Laurinaitis. I just have a question on what accounted for the increase in salaries from 2021-22 to 2022-23.
I'd like to answer that question. The salaries for many employees throughout town were buried in other areas like ambulance revolving fund, water and sewer enterprise funds, in order to, so when I came on board, in order to accurately reflect how much does the finance department cost the town, how much does the IT department cost the town, we are all working for all of these divisions, and I don't book out my salary to water sewer when paying their AP bills or their payroll. It is part of my job in the finance department. So in order to have a greater and clearer sense of how much each department's costs were to that department, all of those costs were brought back into each of those areas. So there was not a doubling of salaries from one year to the next. It's just that those salaries were pulled back into under the umbrella of ITGIS.
So does that mean that other years it was actually really difficult to distinguish what the salary was for somebody? If they were portioned off into different...
It certainly made it very hard to discern in budget documents like this how much did each department truly cost. So the only departments that were truly siphoned off were the police department, the highway department, but in these positions throughout the townhouse where we are wearing hats for every single department, they were, the thought behind it was that each of those departments owned part of that person. So Tim Brezovic still helps just as much at the library now, but the library is not being charged for 10% of Tim Brezovic's salary. So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It does make
Andrew?
sense.
So I guess I'm struggling with that because in the year frame she's mentioning, human capital costs in the town went from $8,038,000 to $8,869,000, and in this budget are $10,361,000. So if we're just rebalancing all the costs, why are we seeing the cost at the town level grow considerably?
There's a cost of living increase included, there are merit increases included in those
And it doesn't-
changes, and there's
Every
also
year?
some additional positions. Yeah, every year, those costs all go up.
Do you think the public gets, every year they get a raise and a merit raise and a cost of living raise? Do they get their pensions going up and their life insurance, their health insurance going up? And
I think Medicare was up for me as a retiree, about the same amount, so I was happy to see that.
Social Security increase this year was 8.7%. We're looking at a combined COLA and merit of 8.7% in this draft budget. That's
Social Security was at 8.7%?
Yes.
Or CPI?
The Social Security CPI is 8.7% this year.
Can you send out a link to that?
But
You can
that
go
counts
directly
health
to-
insurance.
I have, I can't find that.
At 16%, which we're not counting.
One at a time, please.
Would you be able to send out a
Yes,
link?
of
to
course,
that?
it's on the SSA's website, but yes, I can send that press release to you.
Yes, Jack.
16.6% is healthcare. That's the CPI, of the CPI this year. So we're paying for healthcare twice.
We're not.
We pay $1.2 million in healthcare for this town. Whether it's in the budget or not in the police budget or this other budget, we still pay $1.4 million. So,
If I can, getting back to the IT GIS budget, one of the things I had asked Fash to take out of this presentation this year was discussion of the asset management program and how much effort that they're putting into that and the value that that brings to the town, particularly the Public Works Department. Fash, I know you're not geared up to present on.
I'm going to unhide my slides. I'll go ahead and talk about, because since it came up. One thing I usually do every year, Andrew, which some of you have heard me, I go through all the apps, not all the apps, but we show how the technology money is being used in the field with our public works crews. Because all those apps for the public works guys are not public. You don't get to see all the stuff we built for them. We just literally released last night a street lookup app. It's just to look up streets and addresses real quick. Google works, but we have a little more home-tuned. So we're trying to do more public apps so you can see the fruits of the GIS.
Go ahead, try to switch them next one.
That let me toggle.
Try now.
There we go. So as far as the GIS, this has already covered the capital, but we do town has done the flight since '97. Get professionally done photos that are scaled off, corrected, so there's just like a map. The base data is generated.
Sorry, I'm unhiding them as you go.
Oh, okay. These are all hidden slides. I did these just in case they came up. I know some of you have seen some of this before.
Does this include the tax districts?
It includes any maps you see, any of the parcel data, all this is existing. There we go. Thank you, Nicole. So this is covering capital, but this is kind of the base of the data. These are my department people and what they cover. Not a topology, but just kind of the setup of the town. And then, okay. So as far as the GIS portion, over the last 20 years with Nate Brown, who's been here longer than me, we have been collecting, mapping, attributing, all kinds of data, sewer, water, stormwater collection, whatever we can kind of map for utilities. And what we've done over the last, couple of years is try to build these other dashboards for quick looks at the assets of the town. Because Nate and them, which I'm not sure about a slide, they have entire, this is fire rescue. We have apps, kind of some of this is a fire rescue actually. They use this for pre-planning, and pre-planning, Chief Walker can talk better about it, but essentially they're going to a site, they try to put information in about chemical stores, contact information, whatever it is, that's all their data. But we have a similar app for the public works guys that they use. Essentially all this stuff you see on this fire app, the water lines, hydrants, stormwater, it's all mapped internally, and the water and sewer guys, utility crews, have access to it on their iPads and iPhones. And there's a main break, I think, last weekend. So anytime there's a main break, an issue, whatever they need to look for, they pull this app up, they look at what the assets are, and try to, if it's a main break, try to isolate the valve. But this app, or a similar app, this is not their app, similar app is used in Public Works daily for all their data collection. What we've done over the last several years is also create inspection apps as well. Yes?
You see you're creating these apps. Can you be a little more specific?
I'm using Authorize, who's the leading GIS provider. I'm using their ArcGIS Online cloud organization to build these apps. There's numerous options. We also have custom hosted apps as well. The parcel app's a kind of a custom hosted app as well. I use Esri's ArcGIS Online to build kind of similar stuff like this and these dashboards.
So if you want to stop right there for a second, if this was the utility side of the map, what they're able to pull up, if they click on any number of those links there, because each of those highlighted, each of these items, each of these tags, each of these boxes, they're all linked to documents. They're linked to the plans that Fash has scanned in and has scanned in over the years. They're able to look to see exactly where 50, 60, 80, sometimes up to 100 years ago, these things were put into the ground. They're able to see exactly where the valves are, how they're all connected together, which is not anywhere near as straightforward as you would think it would be across town. So even, for instance, just this past week, they're able to, during that main break, if they, needed to see exactly where the different tie-ins are, they could pull out their phone, pull out their iPad, open it up, click on it without having to stop work, go back to the office, dig through files, dig through boxes, or even just dig through their own computer. It's already there, it's right there. This is all the work that they've done. This is why the storage is so comprehensive. This is why we need the backups that we need, because this is where we're storing all these things now. And it saves us an incredible amount of time and money, and it's a huge benefit to the residents and being able to get those services back up online very quickly.
So just to be clear, the DPW water guys can use all of their systems through a tablet?
They can access all of this, yes.
Not this app, but all of their systems?
They
have lots of systems. Stormwater, sewer, water, yes.
And SCADA systems are separate. Those are also accessible.
Those are a little bit different.
So there's nothing the DPW would need to go to our terminal to use?
No, they are mobile.
They are mobile, fully mobile.
Fash, would you say this capability you're describing is matched by many other towns in the state?
No, it's not a secret that Peterborough is very unique, but in New Hampshire, it's unique. But the rest of the world, the United States, towns our size do utilize GIS. Just New Hampshire has been behind the times and continues to be behind the times. The state of New Hampshire just created a GIS committee a few years ago, where other states have had GIS, people leading the states. So, yeah.
Didn't you get an award or something for having?
Yes, 2015, the town won an Esri Special Achievement Award in mapping. Part of it was all the apps we deployed from all the data. Because it used to be, back in the day when I first started, I only had access to the data and the maps. It was kind of ridiculous. So my goal was to get it out to the world, and I used to say this out in the world, like, I'm trying to put myself out of a job, not really. But essentially get all this stuff out of people's heads, on paper, on digital, put it out to the guys in the field. Because we have less utility guys than we had when I first started. So this is essential and crucial for the stuff.
all of our crews are smaller. And not a small amount of that is due to our ability to draw on the digital assets that we have, that we've built up over the 20 years that Fash has been here. It really is an enormous cost savings. The amount of money that we're able to save in engineering time on every single project we do is huge because we have the data already available for them to draw on.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about the cost of GIS, what we started doing when the GIS became a permanent reserve in 08, 07, one thing we started doing was tracking, anytime we did an engineering project, which the town does a lot, we would supply the engineers our data and ask them to tell us how much we saved by just supplying high quality data for topo, and it would consistently come back 5,000 to 10,000. A few years ago we stopped asking. So anytime there's an engineering project, the town gives over our topo, our planimetrics, our water, sewer, whatever, to the engineers to create that preliminary site design. If we didn't have the data, they would have to go out and it would be 10,000 bucks each time. So that's the way we do avoid costs with the GIS, with just the base data. And that's one of the reasons it keeps getting funded.
Mr. Fox.
I was just wondering if the fire and the ambulance had decreased in size.
Their program is a lot different. I was talking specifically about the utilities and public works crews.
Sorry,
Those have decreased.
all their utilities data we feed into the fire app. So Nicole's talking about those purple boxes. Anytime the water and sewer guys see a purple box on their app, it's a plan they can pull up or a tie sketch. But we try to, again, I mentioned silos. It shouldn't just be me or it shouldn't just be Nate. We try to share these data across our platform with our utilities, fire rescue, police department, trying to avoid the silos when not necessary. So. Yes?
Could you go back to the previous slide a second? Not one of the hidden ones.
Oh, these are all hidden, sorry.
Anyway, that one.
Oh, okay.
First bullet under next flight, spring 2024. Can you tell me what an ortho photo is?
An ortho photo is a picture taken from an airplane that's been corrected for all the things that happen when you take pictures of an airplane. The focal lens, the relief, and all that is corrected. It's called ortho rectification. So an ortho photo is a corrected photo, and once it's been created into an ortho photo, the photo is just like any map. You can make measurements, the scale is even, and so on. So, and actually this map data was generated mostly from this photo.
Thank you.
So hopefully that helps. Any other questions? Oh, the asset management, sorry, I didn't go far enough. These are some more dashboards. Again, inspection apps. This has been going on for the last few years. The Backflow app used to be a vendor contract for like $60,000. That's one thing we did bring in-house and just create a quick inspection app, and that saved that money there. And then of course, gate valve, hydrants, these are all exercise apps because these guys go out every year, you know, they do the flushing of the hydrants, do gate valve exercise, and they try to just track what they've touched, if it worked, if they need to go back. The apps aren't meant to be complicated. Right? These are meant to be simple apps that you guys can visually look at, discern what's going on, and move on.
Yeah.
And these are the benefits of the GIS. Yes?
As there are more solar systems and more generators being used or implemented, do we have a map for that? Does Eversource or people keep track of that?
Oh, the solar?
Yes, because they're fed back into the grids in some cases.
I'm not sure.
Eversource is tracking those?
They're tracking. They don't necessarily share that with.
They don't share that with
the PUC.
They don't share that, but we are tracking internally. We are tracking through our assessing software where solar exists.
Yeah. The only thing I can tell you, we map for solar is the array at the sewer plant. That was kind of too big not to put it on the maps. So.
I believe one of the prep goals is to track all of those resources. So, and we have the system to do it, but they've already had that conversation.
Yeah, we've talked to Eversource in the past for other things.
Yeah.
They just get limited in some things they can share.
But we can make it a town effort as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, the addresses would help. I mean, I guess it depends what we can share and what we can track.
Right.
So.
Because the aggregate number might be interesting, that is what the whole town is generating with their solar panels. There may be some, not government programs, but there may be some benefits to knowing the information. Can't think of what they are right now, but some of it's fed back to the grid, some of it's not.
Yeah, the net metering will make a difference, and that's what they're tracking, definitely.
Might be interesting.
Yeah.
I just have a comment about, like, the number of times that people have said, why do we have to fund GIS? And it's always the coolest thing when you describe it. It's just, I mean, I used to be chair of CIP, and so, how many times do we have to defend that 15 grand a year so that you could do a flyover? Like, it's just really cool, and I appreciate your kind of really championing this program.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Appreciate it. Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to looking at planning building and EDA, Danica.
Can I grab that actually?
Thank
Page 3, I think.
No, you're okay. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Danica Melone. I'm the town planner and director of planning and building. So I'm going to talk about our proposed fiscal year budget. Sorry.
There you go, very nice.
There we go. So I wanted to kind of start with a snapshot of a lot of the boards and committees that we work with that are going to be reflected in the budget that we're going over tonight. That includes Planning Board. They have 2 subcommittees, Master Plan Steering Committee and the Capital Improvements Plans Committee, which you guys had visit you a couple weeks back. The Zoning Board of Adjustment, Conservation Commission, Heritage Commission, and they have a subcommittee, the Demolition Review Committee. And then we have the Economic Development Authority, or EDA, who has 4 official subcommittees, and then the Peterborough Welcome Team as well. So starting with just the easy ones here, we have Heritage Commission and Conservation Commission. Neither are changing at all in terms of what they are requesting, but I did want to point out that under services for Conservation Commission, an earlier iteration of this budget did show that their services were going to go up. That has been changed back. The original thought process there was that they were going to be asking to reprint their trails maps this year. They ultimately voted against doing that, so that's why that change has happened. Next is economic development, or the EDA. So under EDA, the only big changes here is that we are looking to be building in the social media services into the budget. Whereas for those who might not be familiar, what happened last year was we took that out of the budget and asked the EDA to go forward with a special petition warrant article to ask the town voters, do they want to spend the money on the services? Ultimately, the town's voters did agree. That did end up going back into the budget. But something else that happened during that process is the EDA sat down, they combed through what the goal of their social media services were, and they refined it because they wanted to make sure that whatever the social media services they were getting moving forward, they had some really good analytics to show that it was fruitful for what the purposes were intended to be. So this past year, we started social media services again with Drum. That started October 1st, so unfortunately we don't have a very big snapshot of what those services are, but we do have a few months in here. So I grabbed a couple analytics just to kind of give everyone a little bit of the flavor. This is their refined mission with their target audience already identified. So taking that, we asked Drum to make sure that they could be giving us analytics back that show us that we are addressing those target audiences. So for instance, one of the target audiences is young families that meet the above characteristics. Looking at our Facebook page and Instagram followers over the past 90 days, we do see that there is an increase in the younger people between 25 to 34 and 35 to 44, especially with Instagram. Instagram tends to be our most popular with reaching that younger audience. And then we have reaching a target audience of urban dwellers as well as folks who are living in the greater Boston and New York metro areas. And this snapshot right here also comes from Facebook's Meta Suite. This is the past 90 days where our ad sponsored buys as well as our general posts are reaching to. So we do see that they are reaching those areas that we've intended for them to reach. So before I keep going on, do we have any questions about EDA at this point? Yeah.
I'm sorry, just on the social media, is this just organic posting or also paid media?
Both. So moving on to planning and building administration. So right now, it's still myself, administrative assistant Laura Norton, an internship. And one of the things that you guys probably heard when Seth McLean was presenting was that Tim Hurley, he is no longer in our department. However, one of the things that we're looking to bring on this year is a planning assistant. And to kind of give a little bit of the background there, historically the department has had a part-time planning assistant. She eventually moved on to bigger and better things before I came on board. In that same realm, when I came on board, we also had a community economic development coordinator who took a good amount of the workload off of my position, but of course she left as well, and that's all come back to me. So on one hand, we know that there is plenty to spread around on a planning assistant. However, one of the biggest pieces to why we're putting this forward this year is that we know there's going to be a lot of support needed for energy planning in the future, particularly because of what has just been adopted through the prep plan. So thank you to Bob Herring-Smith and Dory Jockman who've done a lot of research about why we really need to have this energy coordinator or assistant planner who has this energy coordinator concentration. They've even gone so far as to really dig into what other towns have been able towns and organizations have been able to show in terms of what's worked, what hasn't worked. But I think the most interesting piece here to show you guys is that there's actually a cost savings associated with it. And so for instance, Hartford, Vermont, within the first 7 months of them being on their job, they actually were able to cover their full year salary. So again, this wouldn't be a person who is primarily doing energy coordination, but as a planner coming out of the planning field, all planners usually have a concentration or a field of interest that they specialize in. So we're looking to bring on a planning assistant with that concentration, but I do want to kind of give you, Dory and Bob a chance to speak if I left anything out for that coordinator position.
So one thing that I would add as far as the cost savings that this person could promote is not just town cost savings, but actually resident and business cost savings. That there are a lot of new sources of money that a lot of people don't know about. And part of what this person will be doing is educating folks, and if you need a little bit of hand-holding to like fill out whatever is needed, that person will be available to do that. And so what people would be able to save personally would far outweigh what would go into their share of the salary.
Could you give us one example maybe of what a saving could be for a resident, for example?
Oh, sure. So through the last summer, there were, the Congress passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is going to be putting at least $370 billion into climate mitigation. And so some of the rebates and the tax credits go to doing energy audits on your home above and beyond what New Hampshire Saves does, because like with GIS, New Hampshire is not a leader in that field. And so it's really good that the IRA does have money set aside for conservation and weatherization. So weatherization, converting to heat pumps, all of that, depending upon your salary, you could either be eligible for up to $8,000 in rebates, depending upon your salary. For heat pumps, I think it's $1,600 in weatherization. So we're talking large amounts of money. We're not talking a couple $100s here and there. We're talking up to, if you're in a certain income bracket, you can get up to $14,000 for doing insulation and energy retrofits on your home. And this would be probably for people who are working really hard and don't have time to figure out what money is available. And so,
yeah.
and so they need, it would be very helpful for somebody to be able to do a workshop for the town, to be able to teach them about that.
I'd like to bring some context into this. The first thing I'd like to say is that the town has newly approved a plan for adopting renewable energy resources that runs through 2050. Somebody's going to need to coordinate that plan. It can't fall on Danica's shoulders. She's already overworked. We need someone who is well-versed in these grants and the applications of those. Because the townspeople are going to be asking for that. And if we can't provide it, we're going to be failing. So I personally feel that this is one of the most critical positions in the town in the upcoming years.
Go ahead. Yeah. If you had a question, yeah.
I had a question.
Stephanie, could you say your name, please?
Stephanie Hurley.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, it sounds like this person is going to be focusing on energy, and I'm working on the Affordable Housing Committee, and I wonder if this second planning person would also be available to help with some of that, because it's the same kind of thing that we were all talking about, getting affordable housing, more affordable housing, and there's a lot of grant programs and money out there to help a developer build some of that. So my question is this going to be specifically designed for just energy, or is it going to be able to be used as a helper to you, kind of, to do your stuff?
Yeah, so the idea is that it would primarily be a helper to me, really. And there's, like you said, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there, for instance, with the Affordable Housing Subcommittee that they could certainly help with. The goal, though, to Bill's point, is that we know that there's a lot of energy stuff coming down the line, and because of that, we really want to make sure that this is going to be a person who has a little bit of at least that specialty and can make sure that they facilitate the rollout of that prep plan over time.
Well, there's so much good specific stuff in the plan, it's great.
Yeah, it definitely is great.
What is this position? I'm calculating like 160 hours a week.
It's a full-time position, right? So in years past, like I said, that planning assistant was part-time, so was that community economic development coordinator. Those are both part-time positions. The idea when talking about this was, on one hand, we need a planning assistant, on the other hand, we need an energy coordinator. Again, coming from my experience, knowing that planners tend to have a concentration of expertise, it felt like a better opportunity to marry the two together and give the person the opportunity to get their feet wet in a lot of different fields in our office, but also be able to have that concentration with the prep committee.
I'd also like to mention is that the prep team is not just going to disappear. There's going to be that support out in the field for this position.
I agree. Are these people are these kind of people available and trained? Are they out there? Let's put it that way.
They're out there. They're absolutely out there.
Yes.
Yep. Yes. The goal would be to get them on as soon as possible.
Yes. Yeah. I was just talking with the former town manager in Hanover, and they have a sustainability director, and she was talking about all of the national groups that have grants that their sustainability director was able to connect them up with, and because they had this knowledge.
So there's probably an association of sustainability coordinators.
There actually is not, but there's a whole world of energy.
Well, and to that point, in the planning world, so for instance, I'm American Planning Association affiliated, and a lot of us have different concentration fields that we keep a certificate in. And so energy, sustainability, climate change, resiliency are different certificate programs that we would probably look at on the resume. Yeah.
I just had a question on whether the salary amount includes this position then?
It does.
So it would be you,
Me,
Laura,
the intern, and the planning assistant.
So Oh, okay, an intern as well?
We'd like to retain that, yeah.
And would you be the person to oversee, supervise the energy coordinator?
Yes, yep. Keep going. All right, so on to planning and building operations budget. So for the most part, just about none of these numbers changed very significantly. Behind Tyler's head, there is a little bit of an increase. That is in the event that we do bring on a planning assistant, and if you have the potential to also have an intern at the same time, there is the likelihood that we'll need to buy some supplies to make sure that they're well set in their position there. There is also a small increase to mileage and staff development. COVID kind of threw a wrench in some things for us, and now a lot of opportunities are coming online, not only for myself, especially for staff development, but staff development also covers trainings for the planning board as well as the zoning board. And then our revenues. And so, again, these haven't changed very much either. Annually, I usually sit down with Tim Herlihy and we talk about what we know is coming down the line, which is kind of like looking into a crystal ball a little bit. Based on what we know, we're expecting a little bit of a decrease, and so we wanted the budget to kind of be reflective of just a small drop in revenue. It's very likely we could be hit with some more plans and we can exceed what our expectations are, but that was our reasoning for dropping it down a little bit there. And that's it. Yeah.
Danica, can you go back to the salary slide for a second? And maybe talk a little bit, if you could, about the hours and the duties of the intern?
Of the intern?
Of the intern, how that person would interact with especially with the new split planner and energy coordinator.
Sure. So the internship would be part-time, and usually we aim it to be around a 3-month period, so it falls in line with the semester. Our internship program is based around the intern having the ability to choose a project. Going back to my second slide, which showed all of the boards and committees that we work with, there are a lot of plans in this town. There are a lot of initiatives that are kind of on standstill waiting for someone to kind of shepherd it forward. So through the internship position, we kind of give them the opportunity to look through what we have going on in terms of projects coming down the line. If there's something that fits in with their existing concentration or interest, they can pull that out and say, that's what I want to work on. For instance, the Common Pathway Trail Extension has been a master plan sitting on my shelf since the 90s. There hasn't been too much work expanding that right now, but if they came in and said, I want to be a planner, but I'm really, really passionate about outdoor recreation planning, that might be a project that we can have them latch into. If they had the interest to be working with sustainability and the energy coordinator, we could certainly find crossover there, but for the most part, they would be project specific for that semester.
Thank you.
Carol Nelson, what are the 4-column headers?
Oh, it was
FY 21.
2021 actual, 2021.
Yes.
22 actual.
Yep.
Third column is approved for 2022, 2023, and proposed for this year.
Thank you.
So what's the second column to the, on the left?
Oh,
Last year's actuals.
Last year's actuals.
Actual 21, 22.
So how much does this, without the headers, it's hard for me to understand how much the salary line's going up.
Down.
It's going to go down about $5,000 actually.
He got
Oh, yeah,
moved, but,
yeah.
well, Tim wasn't in your budget last year.
He was in the
Yes, he
budget
was.
last year.
Let's see. Not according to the annual report. His salary came out of DPW the last 3 years.
I budgeted for Tim Herlihy in the planning and building administration, and that's where he is currently paid out of this year.
So the annual report's incorrect.
It's not incorrect. It's reflecting who's supervising him. So his supervisor.
His salary line is under DPW.
If you're looking at the salaries, I'm
That's
assuming that you're looking at the spreadsheet of actual salaries.
Yep.
Yeah, actual wages paid. So in that, it falls under who supervises that person. Even though he was budgeted out of planning and building, his supervisor was the public works director.
That was something I didn't catch actually looking at the annual report.
That's confusing.
Yep, that's why we moved him out. It's way less confusing for everybody.
So who is he reporting to?
He's been reporting to the Public Works Director. That position's been reporting to the Public Works Director for, I want to say, 6 or 7 years now.
So where do you find like the real information?
That's why it's been a long process. I mean, this has been a multi-year process of trying to make the budget far more reflective of how we actually operate the town. There was so much legacy of, this is the way we've always budgeted things, this is the way that we've always accounted for things. When I started working with the budget, actually hands-on doing it myself a few years ago for a couple of years, and then, now we've got Lily on board, who's an absolutely fantastic budget manager. We're finally getting to the point where we've been able to really show how the town actually operates through the budget document itself. This is something that we have been struggling with for a very, very long time.
Yeah, so next year, or I guess for the next annual report?
Yep.
Where will his salary show
You're going to
up?
see his salary exactly where you saw it in the past annual report. It will be showing up in the Public Works, under Public Works as wages earned.
Okay, and he really will report to Seth, and he really will be in that department?
Yep, he has been. It's just taken, it takes longer for the budget document itself to catch up, because this what you're seeing here is, believe it or not, a simplification of the budget. The budget itself is an enormous, enormous document. If we were to actually print out everything that goes into the expenditure and revenues budget, it'd be hundreds of pages long. So it takes just a really long time to actually get all these things.
Yeah, no, I understand, and with
So the
Lily coming
question
on,
is,
it's
does
a
it matter?
process, and it's gonna take a couple of years, but
How's
can I just get some clarification, as we are talking about your budget and your department? So is planning and building still gonna be, like, on the website, will Tim show up under planning and building?
I imagine so. He's still the zoning administrator and building inspector, so all of his applications are still going to be under my department, as well as his contact information should they need him for something like a zoning determination.
That's where that makes no sense to me.
Well, the annual report is, that's gonna list every single person's salary.
I'm talking about the website. You're looking at the planning and building department.
Yep.
Here's Tim.
Yep.
Tim doesn't report to Danica. His budget doesn't come out of there.
But he is still,
So?
Yeah, so.
Well, because
If
Tim and Dan,
you're a
excuse-
contractor and you're looking for a code, and where are you gonna go? The EDA? You're gonna go to the planning and building, right? If you're looking for a code officer, you're gonna be looking for him on the website, right?
Then why move in the first place?
Did we?
Yeah.
Yes.
We moved his salary,
He's not in that department.
not anymore.
Correct.
Well, he wasn't in
He's in multiple departments because he wears multiple hats. He's not just,
That was the problem then.
He's also working,
We had salaries.
Guys.
One conversation at a time, please.
Sorry.
Nicole?
He's also working on capital project management under Seth, which is why he's been under the Public Works Director for a long time. One of his skill sets is capital project management, building management, and he's been very helpful there to Seth. He is currently working on the fire station project, and he will continue to do work like that. He's currently working on the highway garage project. He'll continue to work with Tim Rose on that. There's a lot more that Tim does. Sometimes we move people around, move the positions around, because the people that we've hired into those positions have more ability than what we initially expected from them. They have more capacity. So take, for instance, Gretchen Ray. When she was first hired on, she was hired on into administration to work as the administrative assistant answering the door. She very quickly showed her value as a member of Public Works Department. She's now the Public Works business manager. She's still answering the phones for administration. She's still helping answer questions about assessments. She's still, sending people to my phone or Lily's or the town clerk whenever they need it. But she's also working with Seth. But we had to put her somewhere. Like Lily was saying earlier, rather than cut up and split all of these salaries into 15 different budgets, It's much easier if you have them all in a home budget. What is their primary budget? Who are they primarily answering to? In the case of Gretchen and in the case of Tim Herlihy, they're primarily answering to Seth, so Seth, they're in Seth's budget. It makes the most sense to us logically to do it that way. Now, for the outside, person who's looking for, I need help with, getting a building permit, you're not gonna look for, as was said, you're not gonna look under the public works budget for the code enforcement officer, building inspector. We don't want to have multiple little pages on the website, this one is, we have public works, and we also have code enforcement, and we also have building inspection, and we also have capital project management. It makes more sense to just house those, in a place where people from the outside are naturally going to look for them, which is why in some cases, the website isn't necessarily reflective of the budget. The budget isn't necessarily reflective of operations. We're doing our best to clean it up and make it as logical as possible, but there are always going to be those little inconsistencies, for sure.
Mr. Cox?
Yes, I'm just saying, I want to have 250 pages or 300 pages, because I want to see where everything is. When you cut it down to 150, you throw out a lot of information.
We're not throwing out any information. We're organizing the information so that it makes sense. You don't need to...
You're not throwing it out,
No.
but you're not making it so people can't see it. I can't just look it up in the book. I have to call you, and maybe you'll give it to me, and maybe you won't.
Oh, well, first off, we're absolutely required by law to provide you with any information that you request if that information exists. So let's make that clear. What is not included, for instance, in this, is a breakdown of the Verizon bill and the consolidated bill and
You don't have health care in there?
We do have health care. Health care...
Is it broken? You don't have salaries broken down? You don't have...
We have that information broken down. We report on every actual in the annual report. It is up on our website for all the prior years. You can certainly go look for it there.
There isn't salaries in there.
Yes, there are. Yes, there are. They're not in the printed, it's not in the printed one anymore, but it is up on the website. We keep them up on the website for a minimum of 10 years. Probably longer now because we have a website that has a lot more storage capacity. So the information is there, you have to ask for it. We're happy to provide it for you. That is our job. Our job is to be as transparent as we possibly can be. I can't tell you, for instance, which employee is taking which health care plan, because that's protected information. But I can tell you that this is how much health... Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Isn't it just billing?
No.
That's protected?
No, it's protected information because...
I don't care, yeah. But that's not the health insurance, and if you don't divide it by,
Well, can I just make a quick comment that between the 2022 budget and the proposed budget, human capital costs in this town are going to go up, are requested to go up $1.4 million. It's a 16% increase, which is twice what the COLA adjustment is. I think what we're
It's
hearing
not
is
just COLA.
Well, it's not just COLA, but it's COLA and merit. So there's another half of that 16% is accounted for somewhere.
Exactly.
And I think one of the frustrations is it's not really clear from this where that extra $800,000 is actually playing out.
Well, we just
But
talked
we're going
about-
line by line. And so I think what would be helpful for these types of massive increases, $1.4 million, is if folks could get a breakdown. So I appreciate, and I respect, and I recognize that you do make an effort to be transparent. Very helpful in the temp system. But I think getting that kind of breakdown would be helpful so people can understand that. Because this, though appropriate, is a little bit fuzzy. The prep wasn't supposed to add cost to the town. At least that was my understanding when I voted for it. The tricky part is that we are moving Tim's salary out of this. That happens several times, but those salaries get instantly backfilled. And I think that's where a lot of this sort of bubbling scope creep is coming from. So a more comprehensive town level breakdown would be helpful for folks to understand where this financial change is coming from. Because this is a big change.
I agree. A lot of it is we're filling positions that we had taken out of the budget. We're creating some new full-time positions, which had been part-time positions in past budgets. We're taking some part-time positions.
I think a formalized, shared, published breakdown would be helpful. Because everything you're just saying doesn't get us to $800,000.
When you put it all together, because anytime you're taking a part-time position and converting it to a full-time position, you're also adding on the health insurance costs, which we fully load as a family plan, which adds additional cost as well.
I just want to reiterate the request. If the town
Absolutely.
administration can put together a report that could be shared publicly that outlines this,
We-
I think that would be helpful.
We plan to do a summary of all the changes when we get through all of this. So one of the things that we do at the end of this, we start with an overview of the significant changes at the first meeting. The last meeting that we'll do is a budget analysis, which will include an overview of everything that's been presented and proposed. That'll set the stage for the budget committee and the select board and the public to discuss what's been presented, have a nice summary. We can include some of that information, not all of it obviously, but we'll include some of that information. And hopefully that'll really clarify where all the changes are. Another thing that summary is gonna do is show the net. And that's something that we haven't talked about up to this point. It's going to show the actual net increase or decrease, as the case may be, to each of these departments, which hopefully will help contribute to the conversation.
I wanted to mention that in the last several years, we have met at the start of the year, at the start of the budget year, with the finance director. We met with Lily and we met with her predecessors, at least the last two in my experience, to talk about what we wanted to see changed in the reporting. And they've been very responsive. We have never asked them to provide every bit of information they have because that's just impractical. So we will do that again, I assume, next year. And we will try to figure out what we thought this year was mysterious to us and see if we can't get that clarified in our request to the finance director next year in the reporting. Yes?
I have two questions. One is, Nicole, I want to understand what the relationship is for Danica and for Tim, because Tim works with the zoning board and planning board issues, and that really is an area of expertise for Danica. Yet you're saying that it's Seth who is supervising Tim, so I'm confused about that relationship.
I don't think it's that confusing at all. I think Danica and Tim are very close co-workers. You guys meet regularly, multiple times a day, talking about their work, and I mean, you can certainly speak more to that than I can.
Yeah, I mean, we have to work in very close conjunction, whether it be a project coming online, a project closing out, something going on at the zoning board. We have to bounce those ideas off of each other, so there's no intention to move him out, literally out of the basement where we are, so that he's easy access for everyone and for myself to bounce questions off, but yeah, no, we'll still be in collaboration.
But you're not formally a supervisor of those particular areas for Tim, right?
So like a supervisor of like...
Planning and zoning applications, site plans, issues about putting out...
I'm still director for the planning side of things, and I would suppose the same is the case for zoning board. Where the differentiation happens is oftentimes code enforcement officers are asked to make something called a zoning determination, and that's something that a real estate developer, a real estate agent might ask for at some point. That's pretty typical of a code enforcement officer's role, and because of that, it ties in hand really well with him being the zoning administrator, working with the zoning board, because so much of what you guys do is so black and white. Does that answer the question?
No, I'm just trying to get clear on the road.
She doesn't have to be Tim's boss in order to work together.
No, I know that, but what if there's a conflict?
I guess maybe if I understand you correctly, Loretta, is if there's, say, a builder comes to the town and works with Tim and there's an issue, I think you're saying Tim's boss, Seth, doesn't have the in-depth, perhaps, background in zoning guidelines that maybe Danica would have. Is that what?
Right.
Yes.
Part of it, yeah.
I think maybe in that circumstance, Seth has come down to us or just to me before and kind of asked, what's going on, give me the lay of the land so I can understand better what the complaint is or what the request is from the
So you feel
citizen.
like there's a good working relationship and...
Oh yeah. Seth comes down all the time to kind of check on things and relay communications as needed.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
And Public Works is involved in a lot of these projects. I mean, nothing is built in a vacuum. There's roads, there's utility lines, there's everything else. There's driveway permits. Seth issues the driveway permits. Minor site plan review, Seth and Nate will sit on that as needed. So there's a lot of overlap, there's a lot of coordination, everyone works incredibly well together. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better team, really. They're great.
That's great. I have one other question, and that had to do with the economic development and the $55,000 for social media. I mean, I think if I recall correctly, last year there was a problem with even getting $3,500 for the social media. And there were questions about whether it would go out to bid, so I'm just wondering.
That's a combined number, actually. So that 55,000 that you're looking at includes the original 15,500 that was appropriated at town meeting for those services. And Lily, correct me if I'm wrong, but it also includes the MAST grant project work.
It includes the MAST grant, but it does not include anything for drum. That's a
Oh,
separate
okay.
warrant
All right,
article,
thank
and
you.
that is not in the general fund budget.
Got it, all right. Yeah, so the MAST grant, if you remember that for the downtown visioning work, we were awarded $30,000 from the Danica Alliance for Sustainable Transportation, and the Greater Downtown TIF gave us some match money to help facilitate some of that work.
And that's
Okay, so-
also reflected in the revenue budget, so there's an offset in the revenue budget for that MAST grant, but because municipal budgeting requires the expenditure to be listed separately than the revenue, the MAST grant expenditures resides there, 30,000, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So does that mean that of the 55,000, basically 45,500 is now already earmarked? So there's an increase to make it
No.
up to the 55,000?
55 minus 30 is 25,825.
But I thought that it was a 15,000.
That's a separate warrant
from last
article.
year.
That's a separate warrant article. It does not reside in the general fund budget. It was a special warrant article.
And to be clear, that 16.7 that's in there now for this proposed budget, that encompasses a full one-year contract through the same social media services provider.
So Loretta, at town meeting, when you vote on separate items, they don't get added into the budget. They stay outside of the budget. Even as we're looking back at prior years, those separate items never get added into the budget. So you won't see the current year's expenditures for social media in the budget because it was a separate warrant article that's being proposed for next year, so that the program can be carried forward.
And is it being proposed with the same organization? Or is it something that gets sent out to bid?
It is being proposed at the same amount as the current organization. Whether or not it goes out to bid is a decision that will be made next fiscal year.
Okay.
Dan, could we go back to those statistics that you were talking about for the social media? Basically 6 months since you wrote that contract, were those numbers reflective of 6 months or less?
It's a little bit less than 6 months because they didn't start until October 1st. So what they gave me here is a snapshot of the last 90 days because they have the ability through Facebook's Meta Suite to either do 30, 90, or since the inception of that account being up. So they sent me the 90-day
In
periods.
addition to these stats, do you also get some qualitative information, even
We do.
anecdotal? I mean, you get comments like, oh, you know, I'm
Yep.
in Brooklyn and I saw this,
Yep.
and now I live on Pine Street.
So they do provide us a write-up that gets updated on an ongoing basis as they update or upload posts to either social media platform. It includes organic impressions, likes, reactions. It also includes information about the ad spending, where that goes to, what the reach was, how effective it was. And they usually do that for us in a Google Doc. There's 2 members of the EDA who sit down with Drum and usually review this. And I believe it's kind of almost like a monthly basis. However, the analytics do get reported out on a quarterly basis, and it ends up including everything that comes out of the Meta Business Suite as well. So it's enhanced from that.
Can you make any kind of general summary of what you've heard so far, and good, bad, indifferent, or
I
it's
think,
still too early to tell?
well, I think for what the mission that they've set forward is, they are meeting those goals. I don't necessarily think that we're ever going to have something come forward from analytics that says a business in California saw our Instagram page and because of that relocated to town. It'd be amazing if we did, but I don't know if we'll ever have something as strong as that.
apologies if this is a stupid question, but we have a huge housing shortage in this town. So much so that we have no affordable housing, there's whole communities moving. Given the fact that we don't have enough housing for the people that are already here, why are we spending $35,000 getting more people to move here?
Well, it's twofold. That's actually a really good question. So on one hand, we want people to consider relocating here, not only as a resident, but as a business. So there's a lot of outreach, I think it's up here, to reach telecommuters, home businesses, and skilled employees and small businesses. At the same time, we're also trying to attract developers who are looking at our community as a vibrant place that they might want to do a development. I can only say in the past year, I've had one person who's seen the post of Bonnaroo development out of, I think it's Temple. But it was something that kind of sparked their interest of, you've got a really vibrant community, it seems like you guys are very passionate about your civic engagement. It's a town that we're kind of keeping an eye on in terms of if a plot of land opens up, we might actually consider purchasing it and developing it.
Along those same lines, when you think about large plants like Millport who are based up in the Jaffrey area, they affect their economic development, but they also affect us in some ways. Is there an outreach to that kind of large enterprise? I mean, there are several around the area that come to mind.
Not so much in the way of social media, and I'd actually kind of defer to what the Affordable Housing Subcommittee has been doing. For the past year and a half, really, they've been reaching out to a lot of, local businesses as well as some of our bigger regional businesses like Millport, Sigma, asking what are your needs right now? What are you seeing in terms of, is there a housing shortage? Are you having trouble keeping staff on because of what the cost of living is? And that's been very, very fruitful. One of the first changes that we saw come out of those conversations was Monadnock Hospital came forward and they said, oh no, we're struggling, we really, really need some more housing. We're going to be developing our land for it. We're putting our money where our mouth is. And now we're seeing more larger businesses usually who have those deeper pockets come forward looking to do the same thing.
Yeah, you touched a nerve a little bit on in terms of the hospital. While it's very important to have it here, my understanding is that there's some functions that they cannot perform that the greater these types of communities, there are industrial accidents that happen in some of these plants or situations, or a lot of population that have to be sent somewhere. And they're probably taken there by our ambulances in many cases, or assisted. So there's a greater impact. And I don't know how we plan for that or incorporate that in our overall budget world, if you want to call it that.
Budget,
the hospital itself needs some help, I think.
The budget world's aspect of that, I don't know if I have the answer to, but one of the things that we do have in the zoning ordinance is something called phased development, which if you're increasing the population by a certain percentage, and I'm gonna look to you, I think it's 2%.
1%.
1%
per year.
1% per year, then there has to be a very detailed phasing plan, and a key piece to that phasing plan is working with especially DPW as well as fire and rescue and PD to kind of see what do you see coming down the line from this project that we need to be acting on. Something that could come out of that is something like off-site exactions, where we might see that there's a culvert in the road that's deteriorating at a pretty good rate. If we're going to have a substantial amount more cars, plus the traffic from trucks and other materials getting trucked up there, we might have them pay for the culvert replacement. So that is something that we have in our back pocket should we need it. Right now, we've not been hit with anything that's come down the line quite that substantial, but it looks like they might get applied to us pretty soon.
There's, because of increase of one, hopefully final thought for me, due to increased traffic in general, but our roads have been improved, the bridges have been being improved, there's a little bit more activity around them. There's need for different kinds of signage, I would sense. In fact, one that I did see was, it says traffic light ahead, but it lights up and it says that the light is red or green. You're coming around a big corner, a big sweep, and you don't know that's there, given the amount of activity right now. Do you get involved in issues like that, or is that strictly traffic and
I do touch on transportation planning a little bit. For the most part, that's Seth's world in terms of the nuts and bolts, and then fire and rescue in terms of is it safe? But from my perspective, I can work pretty closely with Southwest Regional Planning Commission in terms of working with DOT to make sure that we're in line with their 10-year action plan for projects. Their red listed bridge project page. We do have actually the CIP chair, Leandra McDonald, is the representative from Peterborough to Southwest Regional Planning Commission's Transportation Advisory Committee, or TAC, who speaks directly with DOT and helps to prioritize our projects.
And how many cars are coming through the area? There's a car
Yep.
count or a truck count?
So for instance, Southwest Regional Planning Commission also will do traffic studies. In another life, I also did those same traffic studies way up north, and so there's various ways you can do that in terms of how many axles you're looking at, the frequency, the turning data. So we can get that pretty easily if we need to, but actually, in talking with Seth, DPW has the ability to do a little bit of that on their own with the feedback centers for speeding, for instance. Right now, just a shout out for anyone who's listening about tough spots on roadways, Southwest Regional Planning Commission is doing a Route 101 and Route 202 corridor study and asking folks to submit locations that are particularly troublesome or there's an opportunity for enhancement. I've listed a whole bunch of points, but the more the merrier. You're welcome to like them, comment on them, disagree with me if you don't think there's an issue, but.
Where do you find that?
It's on their homepage, but it's a little.
Southwest Regional Planning?
It is. It can be a little bit tricky to find because it's very small print, but maybe it's something I can.
Let's push
pass
that
on.
to the dispatch.
Yeah,
Visualize it.
definitely.
Yeah, that is a
Yep.
good idea.
Yep.
Anything else, Danica?
That's it.
Seeing no more questions, thank you, Danica.
Thank you.
Bill, you want to go over the minutes for approval?
That's you. No. It doesn't matter. What, did anybody review the minutes?
They were circulated.
Everybody have anyone have any problems with them? And a motion to approve the minutes?
I think we have 2 sets of minutes to approve tonight, is that correct?
No,
Or just the
just
one?
the 17.
Okay. We weren't doing select board separate from budget?
It's the same set of minutes. So usually a select board member will make a motion to approve the select board portion of the minutes, and then a budget committee member will make a motion to approve the budget committee
That's right.
portion of the minutes.
And that's what we're doing tonight, correct?
Yes.
All right, we go Tyler, all on the select board in favor?
Aye.
Right,
Aye.
Did you second it?
I did, yep, and.
All right, do we have a motion
Jack
from
Carl.
the budget committee to approve the
Move to
minutes?
approve the minutes.
I'd like to second that.
Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor, raise your hand, please. I see 2 hands in the audience, too. I note that for the record. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Great questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
I have a question. When else are you gonna talk about the whole budget? You know?
More snow coming.
You got it.
Tomorrow.
7?
Yeah.
Oh, really?